"Step back," said Sergeant Brooks. The crowd froze. Even the flag seemed to still. The echo of his voice rolled across the white marble like a slow drumbeat. The woman, Karen, half turned, her phone still raised mid-selfie. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "I'm not hurting anyone." Her sandal heel was already across the velvet rope, sunlight flaring off the polished metal posts. Her husband, Mark, whispered, "Karen, don't—" but she ignored him. Brooks's boots clicked once on the stone, one step forward, deliberate, the sound like a gavel striking order into chaos. His rifle gleamed under the noon sun. Before we go further, subscribe now to this channel if you stand for duty, honor, and sacrifice. These stories keep their legacy alive. The crowd's murmurs faded into reverent quiet. Some lowered their cameras, others held their breath. Karen looked around, flustered that all eyes were now on her. "I just wanted a picture," she said. "He's just standing there doing nothing." Brooks's face didn't move. He didn't speak. His posture, square-shouldered and still as carved stone, was the answer. The tomb of the unknown soldier loomed behind him, marble white and flawless, etched with words that seemed to hum under the heat. "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." A child whispered to his mother, "Mom, is he allowed to talk?" Brooks's jaw flexed once. The air thickened with the weight of discipline, 11 years of it. Karen crossed her arms. "Oh, come on, what's the big deal? I'll be quick." One more click, her phone's camera chirped. Then came the command. Crisp. Final. "Ma'am, step back." The words carried more power than a shout. They were controlled fire, 3 syllables forged in duty. Her breath hitched. She hesitated, half smiling to save face. "Seriously? You're being dramatic. This is public property." The guard's eyes, gray, steady, didn't waver. Every visitor knew it then. This was no costume, no theater. It was covenant. From the shade, Specialist Ryan Cole watched, pulse hammering in his neck. He was still a trainee, still learning the cadence, the turns, the gravity of silence. But right now, his mentor was the immovable wall between reverence and chaos. A bead of sweat rolled down Ryan's temple, catching the glare of the marble. His gloved hand pressed tighter to the rifle stock, the way he always did when nerves flared. Karen scoffed. "What? Are you going to arrest me for taking a selfie?" Officer Tate Reynolds had already stepped forward from the perimeter, badge glinting on his chest. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "you need to stay behind the line." She glared between them, guard, officer, husband. "This is ridiculous. He's a statue with a gun. Lighten up." The silence after that felt heavier than stone. Brooks didn't blink. He didn't breathe out of rhythm. The click of his next step, the measured turn of his heel on marble, was sharp mechanical perfection. Then, rifle angled precisely, he resumed the 21-step pace before the tomb. The crowd watched him reclaim the sacred cadence. 21 seconds pause, 21 steps turn, 21 seconds again. The number echoed the 21-gun salute, the nation's highest honor. Karen huffed. "Unbelievable." Mark lowered his eyes. "You shouldn't have crossed it," he muttered. "What, that little rope? I just wanted—" "Ma'am," came Brooks's voice again, calm, low. "The line is not a prop." Her words caught mid-protest. The rifle clicked back into rest against his shoulder. "That line," he continued, "marks where reverence begins." The sound carried, a simple statement, yet it tore through the hot air like a hymn. Someone in the crowd clapped once, another followed. Then it died down, not into noise but into quiet respect. Karen stared at him. She didn't know where to look. The rope she'd brushed moments ago now seemed heavier, almost alive with unseen meaning. Behind Brooks, the wind shifted. Flags snapped hard, 3 sharp cracks against the pole. The scent of cut grass and faint gun oil drifted on the breeze. Ryan Cole swallowed. He'd memorized every movement of Brooks's turn, every pause, but this was the part they didn't teach in manuals. The confrontation between silence and ignorance, the quiet violence of respect. Brooks halted precisely on his mark, his gaze fixed forward. The rifle shone like a mirror, reflecting the sun straight into the crowd's eyes. Karen took a slow step back behind the rope. Her face flushed red, not from heat but from something else. Recognition, perhaps, that she'd crossed more than a barrier. Mark placed a hand on her arm. "Let's just watch," he whispered. She nodded faintly. For the first time, the phone dropped to her side. The next turn began. Boots struck stone. The rhythm returned, perfect, deliberate, eternal. But inside the hush, something shifted. The people who'd come for photos were now witnesses, to precision, to purpose, to sacrifice. And though no one said it aloud, everyone felt it. This was not just ceremony. It was guardianship. A crow called from a nearby oak, its sound stark against the vast silence. The clouds thickened over the ridge, dimming the brightness, turning the air electric. Karen glanced up uneasily. "Looks like rain," she whispered. Brooks's eyes stayed locked ahead, unbothered by weather, by words, by anything. Then, just as thunder rumbled far beyond the cemetery walls, Karen muttered under her breath, not realizing the microphone of the crowd had turned on her. "You're not even real soldiers. You're just actors in costumes." Gasps spread instantly. A tourist dropped his hat. Ryan's pulse spiked. Officer Tate took a step forward. But Brooks didn't move, not yet. He pivoted on his heel, eyes level, spine straight, rifle steady. Each movement slow, lethal in precision. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Drops darkening his uniform, but not his bearing. And with one step, one glance, he crossed the line again. This time, not to defend marble, but meaning itself. The crowd held its breath as thunder cracked overhead, echoing through the cemetery. The guard stopped within arm's length of her, rain running down his cap brim, voice calm as a prayer. "Ma'am," he said, "you've mistaken silence for emptiness." The next words came like steel drawn from its sheath. "But the unknowns are listening." The thunder answered him. "Say that again." The storm had broken fully now, thunder groaning low across the Potomac, rain hammering the plaza in sheets. Karen blinked water from her lashes, her phone forgotten, her breath shallow. Brooks didn't repeat himself. His eyes were still, his uniform soaked through but perfect, rifle gleaming under each flash of lightning. The crowd stood motionless behind the velvet rope, their umbrellas forgotten. Officer Tate Reynolds stepped forward, voice low, steady. "Ma'am, that's enough. Step back and keep your distance." Karen shook her head, indignant despite the tremor in her voice. "I didn't mean anything, I just—" Brooks's boot struck marble with a sound that silenced her, a single, deliberate step closer. "You said we're actors," he said. "That's what you believe?" Mark tried to interject. "Sir, she didn't mean—" Brooks's gaze stayed on her. His words weren't angry. They were sharp with something colder, disappointment. "Then tell me, ma'am, what part of this looks like play?" The rifle on his shoulder shifted slightly as he turned his head, rain cascading from his brim. The lightning caught his eyes for half a heartbeat, calm, gray, endless. Karen swallowed. Around her, the crowd barely breathed. From behind, Ryan Cole watched every motion. He was soaked, but his focus didn't waver. This was the test he'd been training for, though no manual had written it down. A guard's composure wasn't just about balance or cadence. It was about moral gravity. "Sir," Ryan whispered under his breath, 21 seconds. He could feel the rhythm in his bones, even here in the tension. Brooks ignored the rain, ignored the shaking phone now hanging at Karen's side. "Every man and woman buried here once breathed freedom into your life," he said quietly. "They gave their names away so you could keep yours." A murmur rippled through the crowd, reverence returning like a tide. Karen opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came. Brooks turned sharply, his heel grinding against the slick marble as he resumed his post. The sound, crack, rang louder than thunder. For a few seconds, all that existed was sound, rain striking marble, boots hitting stone, wind snapping the flag in half arcs overhead. Then Karen's voice cut through again, smaller now. "I didn't know." Mark looked at her, for the first time that day, really looked at her. "You didn't want to know," he said softly. "You just wanted a photo." She looked down at the rope. The same rope that had felt soft and harmless earlier now looked like a barrier she could never cross again. Officer Tate kept watch, eyes narrowed under his dripping cap. He'd seen this before, not the confrontation, but the moment after, when disrespect met discipline and came out changed. He'd seen it in foreign cities, in bases overseas, in funerals that never made headlines. The moment when silence speaks louder than shouting ever could. Brooks's turn was flawless. His rifle snapped against his shoulder. He paused, counted, pivoted. A sequence of duty carved into his muscles long ago. Ryan Cole exhaled softly, admiring the precision, even as lightning painted the white stones gold. Then Karen whispered to herself, barely audible, "Why don't they stop for the rain?" A veteran in the crowd answered before anyone else could. His voice cracked with memory. Because the unknowns didn't stop for theirs. Karen's eyes lifted, slow, hesitant, toward Brooks's unflinching form. The lightning flash behind him silhouetted everything, the marble tomb, the eternal inscription, the flag straining in the wind, and him, a single figure standing between history and forgetfulness. It didn't matter that his uniform was drenched, that water streamed down his face. He didn't wipe it away. He couldn't. Tomb guards don't break bearing, not for weather, not for pain, not for pride. She realized it then. He wasn't ignoring her. He was protecting something she hadn't even tried to understand. The camera in her hand flickered, its lens fogged by rain. She lowered it completely. Ryan caught Brooks's eyes for a brief second between paces. The silent message was clear. Hold the line. Brooks did. Every step a sermon, every pause a prayer. Karen finally turned to Officer Tate. "Can I say sorry to him?" Tate shook his head gently. "He's on duty, ma'am. He can't respond. Not until the post is complete." She nodded faintly, tears blending with the rain on her cheeks. Mark put an arm around her shoulders. Together they stepped back into the crowd, not out of fear this time, but respect. When the clock struck the next relief change, Ryan Cole moved forward under the command of Brooks's nod. The handover was wordless, precise, reverent. Brooks's voice, deep and steady, carried over the rain for the first and only official words he would say. "Post and orders remain as directed." Ryan repeated them. "Post and orders remain as directed." The exchange was ceremonial, ancient as the duty itself. Brooks stepped aside, his boots clicking on marble. His uniform clung to him like armor. He didn't look toward Karen, not once. But as he passed, his words carried low, meant only for her and the heavens above. "Some posts," he said quietly, "are never left." The words sank through the downpour like stone into deep water. Karen's lips trembled. She didn't raise her camera again. Lightning flashed, framing Brooks in gold for one last heartbeat, before he vanished into the misting rain, replaced by Ryan's steady march. The crowd stayed silent long after. And somewhere in that silence, reverence returned, raw, heavy, earned. The storm eased, the flag straightened, and the marble gleamed like it had been washed clean by the tears of the living. But as the final raindrop hit the rope where Karen had crossed, she whispered something almost to herself. He was right. The line isn't a prop. Then, from the shadows of the memorial arches, a flashbulb popped. A journalist's camera. The headline would spread before nightfall, and by morning, the world would know the tomb guard's reply. Post and orders remain as directed. Ryan's voice echoed against the marble walls like a vow carved into eternity. The storm had passed, leaving behind steam rising from the soaked plaza. Brooks stood at parade rest under the archway, uniform clinging to his frame, eyes locked on the new sentinel pacing before the tomb. The crowd had thinned, but not dispersed. Karen and Mark stayed. So did Officer Tate. The air smelled of rain and brass, like the aftermath of a battle no one saw, but everyone felt. Brooks turned slightly, just enough to watch Ryan's cadence. 21 steps, 21 seconds, turn. Perfect. Every strike of his heel sang like truth. Karen took a tentative step forward toward Tate. "Is he still angry?" Tate didn't look at her. "Tomb guards don't get angry," he said. "They get steady." She hesitated. "I didn't understand." "No one does at first," Tate murmured. "That's why they stand." The sound of Ryan's boots carried through the quiet, the only heartbeat left in the world. Brooks stepped into the open, joining Ryan at the line as part of inspection. Their uniforms dripped clean water down the polished stone. Brooks's tone was low, deliberate. "Sentinel, What is your order? Ryan's answer came without a flinch. Sir, my orders are to stand my post and protect the tomb of the unknown soldier, no matter the time, weather, or circumstance. The crowd listened. The words weren't shouted, yet they cut through every whisper. Brooks circled him slowly, inspecting every inch. His gloves pressed against the barrel of Ryan's rifle, checking for water residue. Why do we stand? Ryan's voice trembled, but held. Because they can't. Brooks paused. That was the real answer. The unspoken oath passed from silence to silence. He nodded once, approving. Then he turned to face the tomb itself. Lightning flashed in the far distance again, but now it was gentle, almost reverent. The clouds parted, streaks of pale gold spilling across the marble like a benediction. Brooks spoke, again, not to the crowd, not to the rain, but to the air itself, to the weight above them all. We don't guard marble, he said. We guard memory, and memory fades fast if no one's willing to stand still for it. Karen's breath hitched. The words landed heavier than scolding ever could. Brooks's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. When the unknowns fell, they gave up their faces, their names, their futures. The least we can do is give up our comfort. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The sound of his tone filled the plaza like a hymn. Ryan swallowed hard, still pacing. His rifle caught the last drop of sun, scattering it across the wet stone. Karen whispered, "He's still wet. He hasn't changed. Why doesn't he just—" Because that's the oath, Tate said. The oath doesn't end when the rain stops. Mark stared at Brooks. You served too. Tate nodded once. Different war. Same silence. Brooks slowly turned back toward the tomb, his reflection shining faintly in the slick marble base. Most people think silence is emptiness, he said, but silence is where the fallen still speak. Karen's phone, still waterlogged, vibrated once in her hand. Notifications, headlines already breaking. Tourist confronts tomb guard amid rainstorm. She shut the screen off. For the first time all day, she felt ashamed to have it. A little boy near the crowd asked softly, "Mom, who's in there?" Brooks heard the question. His head tilted slightly. Someone's son, he said. Someone's brother. Someone whose name never came home. The mother pulled the boy closer, whispering something, but her eyes stayed locked on the guard. Brooks walked toward the rope, his steps slow, precise. He didn't cross it. He stood just at the edge, every inch the embodiment of duty. You crossed this line earlier, he said, looking at Karen now. But lines mean something, ma'am. They're the borders between what we want and what we owe. Karen's eyes welled. I didn't mean disrespect, I swear. He nodded slightly. I believe you. Then, after a breath, but belief doesn't erase action. Respect does. He stepped back, returning to the shadows of the archway. His silhouette lingered, framed by the flag still fluttering overhead. Ryan continued his watch, boots striking rhythm, rainwater evaporating into faint mist. Karen looked toward the tomb, whispering, I didn't even know they still guarded it every hour. Tate gave a quiet smile. They don't stop. Not for storms, not for shutdowns, not for anyone. Even when the world fell silent in 63 and Suwon in 20, they were still here. Brooks's head turned slightly, acknowledgement, but no words. Karen nodded, voice small. I think I get it now. No, Brooks said, his tone gentle but iron. You feel it. That's different. The clouds thinned above, the last rays of sunlight breaking through, bathing the plaza in gold. The mist shimmered over the marble as though the unknowns themselves breathed it out. Brooks removed his cap slowly, placing it against his chest, and looked at the tomb for a long, silent moment. The crowd followed, one by one, heads bowed, phones down. The sound that followed was pure stillness, the rare kind that changes people. And then, from the base of the steps, a voice called out, sharp official, Commander Brooks! Everyone turned. A suited official from the Department of the Army stood at the gate, flanked by 2 aides. Rain still dripped from his umbrella. You're to report to headquarters immediately, he said. Command review regarding the incident. Ryan's rifle paused mid-swing. Karen's eyes widened. They're blaming him? Brooks straightened, eyes unreadable. Understood, he said. The official nodded curtly. Effective immediately. Your relief will assume post. Tate took one step forward, but Brooks's hand lifted slightly, a signal to hold position. Brooks looked once more at the tomb, then to Ryan, then to the rope. "Maintain your watch," he said. Ryan saluted, eyes fierce. "Yes, Sergeant." Brooks returned the salute, precise as a heartbeat, and turned toward the archway. Karen called out softly, "Wait, please, he didn't do anything wrong." Brooks didn't respond. His boots echoed into the marble corridor until the sound faded completely. The plaza stood in stunned silence. Rainwater rippled in his footprints, and in that echo the question lingered. Would honor still stand when authority questioned it? "Sergeant Brooks, wait!" Karen's voice cracked through the mist as Brooks disappeared under the stone archway. But the guard didn't slow. His boots hit the wet marble in steady rhythm. Not retreat, not surrender, just continuation. Officer Tate stepped between her and the corridor. "Let him go, ma'am," he said quietly. "Orders are orders." Karen's voice trembled. But he didn't do anything wrong. He was defending them, defending this. She gestured toward the tomb, the rope, the soaked marble plaza. Tate's jaw flexed. "You think I don't know that?" Behind them, Ryan Cole marched on. His every turn, every pause, every breath, a defiant symphony of precision. The sun was gone now, replaced by the bruised blue of twilight. The lamps around the plaza flickered on, throwing long shadows that stretched like ghosts across the headstones. Mark stood silent beside his wife. The folded brochure in his hand had bled color from the rain, its ink streaking his fingers. "He's being punished for doing his job," he said softly. Tate looked out toward the horizon. "Command doesn't like headlines, especially the kind that start with a viral video." Karen's stomach twisted. Her phone, that same device that had caused all this, buzzed again. Notifications. "Karen versus the Tomb Guard. Entitled Tourist Challenges Soldier." Her hand shook. "Oh God, yeah, what have I done?" The smell of rain lingered, clean but heavy, laced with earth and regret. Ryan's boots struck marble. Crack, crack, crack. The sound echoed, sharp and measured, the kind of rhythm that doesn't break even when the world does. Tate turned to her, lowering his voice. "You can't fix this with an apology, but maybe you can stand quietly for a while. That's how we start." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll stand." And she did. The woman who had demanded a selfie now stood at attention, silent, facing the tomb. Mark followed beside her, hat pressed to his chest. The last of the tourists, those who'd lingered out of guilt or awe, began to do the same. It was as if the air itself was holding its breath. Under the arch, Brooks stopped before the official who had summoned him. The man's umbrella dripped onto polished floors. "You've caused quite the storm, Sergeant," the official said. "With respect, sir," Brooks replied, "the storm was already here. I just didn't bow to it." The man frowned. "We can't have confrontations with civilians broadcast like that." Brooks's eyes narrowed, calm and steady. "What do you suggest we do when someone crosses the line, sir? Let the tomb defend itself?" The official hesitated. "You could have ignored her." "Ignore the rope?" Brooks asked. "Ignore the oath?" Rain dripped from the brim of his cap to the floor, each drop punctuating the silence. "She called my guards actors," Brooks said, "but the ones we guard were soldiers who never came home. If we don't stand up for them, sir, who will?" For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of distant thunder, rolling over Arlington's ridgeline like an echo from another war. The official said nothing, just turned away, muttering, "Command review at 0600. Until then, you're relieved." Brooks saluted sharply, then pivoted on his heel. "Understood." When he stepped back into the plaza, the sight stopped him cold. The tourists were gone, all but a handful. Ryan was still walking, perfect and unbroken. But now behind the rope, Karen stood silently beside Tate and Mark. No phone, no movement, just stillness. And for the first time that day, she looked not at the guard, but with him. Brooks walked to the line and halted. His reflection shimmered in the wet stone between them. Karen spoke first. "Sir," she said, voice barely audible, "I'm sorry. I didn't know what this place meant." Brooks's gaze didn't waver. "You know now." Her eyes glistened. "They're all unknown?" He shook his head slightly. "No, they're known. Just not by name. He looked past her toward the endless rows of white headstones fading into the dusk. Every one of them has a story, a mother, a silence that used to have a voice. Karen pressed her hand to her chest. And you keep watch for all of them? Brooks nodded once. As long as it takes. The lamps flickered brighter now, catching in the raindrops on his uniform, turning each bead into a tiny star. The rifle on his shoulder gleamed like a mirror of light. Ryan's voice echoed from behind, calling the cadence as he marched past the tomb. 21 seconds, Brooks answered quietly. 21 lives. The rhythm of duty and memory flowed like music between them. Karen stepped back behind the rope and bowed her head. Her tears fell silently into the puddled marble, merging with rain indistinguishable. Brooks turned toward Ryan, ready to relieve him early, when a sudden flash from a parked van caught his eye. A camera lens. A voice shouted through a megaphone from the street. "Sergeant Brooks, you think you're a hero. People say you embarrassed that woman. The world's watching." The crowd that had once been reverent began to grow again. News vans, onlookers, flashing lights. Tate cursed under his breath. "Press." Brooks didn't move. His posture didn't waver. Ryan whispered, "Sir?" Brooks lifted his chin slightly. "Hold the post." He stepped forward again, water splashing under his boots. Lightning flickered across the marble as the voices grew louder. Cameras, questions, chaos. And in the center of it all, one man stood perfectly still, soaked to the bone, rifle gleaming, gaze steady on the tomb. The same stillness the unknowns were buried with. He spoke softly, but the words carried through microphones, through rain, through time itself. "You can film duty, but you can't fake it." The plaza went quiet again, not out of fear, but awe. A single clap of thunder broke the silence like applause from heaven, and from the crowd's edge, Karen whispered, "They'll never understand until they stand here." Brooks looked at her, the faintest nod. "Then let's help them see." The lamps flickered once more, golden on marble, the tomb glowing in the night rain like a beacon of memory. But in the distance, behind the cameras, a voice shouted, "Command's not happy, Sergeant. They want you gone." Brooks turned his head slightly, eyes hardening. He didn't raise his rifle. He didn't shout. He simply said, "Then I'll stand until they make me leave." The wind rose again, sweeping the flag to full extension, and for a heartbeat, even the world seemed to salute him. "Sergeant Elijah Brooks, report to command immediately." The order came through Tate's radio, cold and clipped. Brooks heard it from across the plaza. The crowd heard it too. He didn't move at first. His eyes stayed fixed on the tomb, the stone glowing under the night lamps, rain beating and running down its edges like tears from the heavens. Ryan Cole, still on post, whispered under his breath, "Sir, what'll happen?" Brooks answered without looking away, "Whatever it is, it'll happen after I finish my duty." The cameras zoomed in, red lights blinking like watchful eyes. A sea of umbrellas gathered behind the rope again. Reporters, onlookers, tourists. The world had come back, drawn to the storm of silence. Karen stood at the front of the rope. Her phone was gone. She had deleted everything hours ago. Now she held nothing but a soaked handkerchief and the kind of guilt that can't be posted away. The wind carried the faint rustle of flags, the smell of rain and gun oil still in the air. Officer Tate stepped closer. "Elijah, they're serious. Command review at dawn, and they're looking to make an example." Brooks's voice stayed calm. "Let them, but not until the tomb's relieved." He looked at Ryan, standing steady in his rhythm, boots cracking marble like clockwork, rifle gleaming with raindrops. "Finish your watch, Sentinel." "Yes, Sergeant." The crowd fell silent again, mesmerized by the steadiness of it, the eternal march, the 21 seconds of reverence that never broke. Karen stepped forward just to the edge of the rope. "Sergeant Brooks," she called, her voice trembling. He turned, only slightly. "I came here today thinking this place was a monument," she said, her words quivering in the cool night. "Something to take pictures of. But I was wrong. It's a heartbeat." Brooks said nothing. He simply held her gaze. "You shouldn't be punished for doing your duty," she went on. "If command wants to know what happened here, I'll tell them." He shook his head slowly. "No need." "Why?" she asked. "You did nothing wrong." Brooks's answer came low and even. Because doing right isn't about being thanked. It's about standing when no one else will. Ryan halted at the far end of his walk. He turned precisely, rifle against his shoulder, boots aligning on the white stone edge. The sound was thunderous in its perfection. The cameras kept rolling. Some reporters whispered into their mics, narrating history in real time, but the moment needed no commentary. Brooks stepped to the rope inches from the crowd. His voice cut through the stillness like steel through silk. "You all came to see a soldier," he said. "You thought we were statues, props, performers." He took a breath. "But we are reminders of what silence costs and who paid for it." The hush deepened. He looked directly at Karen then, his voice firm but not unkind. "Ma'am, we don't pose for cameras. We stand for the ones who can't." The words landed like thunder without sound. Karen covered her mouth, her tears falling freely now. Mark wrapped his arm around her shoulders, whispering, "Let him finish his post." Brooks turned toward the tomb again. His movements were deliberate, ceremonial. He lowered his rifle, checked its angle, then executed one final perfect about-face. "Relieve the sentinel," he said quietly. Ryan stepped forward. "Post and orders remain as directed." Brooks nodded once. "Carry on." The exchange was flawless, ritual, sacred, unbroken. Then Brooks turned toward the archway where the official waited in the distance. Rain dripped from the brim of his cap. The plaza lights glowed against the mist, bathing the marble in gold. He stopped halfway, looked back one last time. Every head was bowed now, even the cameras lowered. The same woman who had crossed the rope now stood as still as the guards themselves. He gave her a final nod, almost imperceptible, then walked into the archway's darkness. The sound of his boots faded. Then silence claimed the plaza once more. Ryan resumed the watch. Step, step, turn. Karen looked toward Tate. Will they really take his post away? Tate sighed. Maybe for a while. But you can't erase a man like that, not from this ground. The lamps flickered, the flag above the tomb snapping once more. From the far steps, a young boy's voice rose softly. Mom, he's coming back, right? His mother smiled faintly through tears. Yes, honey. Maybe not today, but men like him always come back. The camera crews left first. The tourists drifted away. And soon only the sound of boots on marble remained, eternal, steady, faithful. As the night deepened, the tomb glowed under the floodlights like the world's last heartbeat of honor. Karen knelt at the rope, placed her hand against the wet stone and whispered, "Thank you." Above her, the flag caught the last breath of the storm and unfurled fully, a wave of red, white, and blue over the silent guard. And though Brooks was gone, his words hung in the air, echoing against the marble, the memory, the men who never came home. We stand for the ones who can't. If you stand for them too, for honor, for sacrifice, for the ones who kept watch in silence, subscribe now, because their duty never ends and neither should remembrance.